the weakest species in the galaxy. The Galactic Coalition had seen thousands of species rise, evolve, and either fade into obscurity or ascend into power. Strength, intelligence, adaptability, these were the measures by which civilizations were judged. And in this vast, ancient network of worlds, reputations were everything. So when humanity finally arrived, they were laughed at. The massive orbital station Carthus Prime shimmered against the void of space, its rotating rings filled with life from every corner of the galaxy. Delegates, warriors, scientists, and observers had gathered in record numbers. Not for war, not for diplomacy, but for evaluation. A new species had joined the coalition. Humans. Inside the Grand Assembly Chamber, the air buzzed with quiet conversation. Alien languages overlapped, clicks, hums, vibrations, and telepathic pulses, all discussing the same thing. They don't even have exoskeletons. I heard their bodies are mostly water. They survived on a death world? Impossible. Commander Threx of the Varnak Dominion stood among them, towering over most beings present. His armored frame gleamed under the chamber lights, every inch of him built for combat and survival. His species had evolved under harsh radiation and brutal predators. Strength was their identity. And yet, even among warriors, Threx felt something close to amusement. Across the chamber stood the human delegation. 3 individuals. That was it. No guards. No visible weapons. No biological enhancements that anyone could detect. Just 3 soft-looking beings standing calmly in a room full of apex predators. Those are the humans? Threx asked, his deep voice vibrating through the air. A nearby delegate nodded. Yes. Representatives of Earth. Threx studied them carefully. Their skin was exposed, no armor, no protective plating. Their frames were small compared to most species. Their eyes moved constantly, scanning their surroundings, yet there was no visible fear. That was unusual. Still, appearance mattered. And by every known metric, humans looked weak. Unremarkable, Threx muttered. They will not last long in Coalition space. Nearby, a luminous being known as Scholar Viral shifted her glowing form. You judge too quickly, Commander. Threx let out a low, rumbling sound. Strength is not subtle. It is obvious. Sometimes, Viral replied, it is hidden. Threx said nothing more. He had seen enough civilizations to recognize the pattern. New species often tried to appear confident. It was a survival instinct. A bluff. But bluffs didn't last. Sooner or later, reality revealed itself. And today, reality would be measured. A deep, resonant tone echoed through the chamber. The conversation stopped instantly. At the center of the hall, a figure materialized, ancient, towering, and impossible to fully comprehend. The Arbiter. No one knew its origin. Some claimed it predated the Coalition itself. Others believed it was not a being at all but a system given form. What everyone agreed on was that its judgment was absolute. Attention, delegates. The voice was not spoken but felt, resonating directly in the minds of every being present. The evaluation of the newly admitted species will now begin. All eyes turned toward the humans. Ambassador Daniel Reyes stood at the front. His posture was relaxed, his expression neutral. Beside him, Dr. Aisha Khan observed the chamber with sharp, analytical focus. Captain Elena Volkov stood slightly behind, her stance balanced like a coiled spring. They didn't look nervous. They didn't look intimidated. If anything, they looked curious. The purpose of this evaluation, the Arbiter continued, is to determine the classification of the species known as humanity within the Galactic Coalition. A holographic display appeared above the chamber floor, projecting data streams, environmental models, and biological comparisons. Category 1, Physical Capability. A ripple of amusement spread through the assembly. Several delegates didn't bother hiding their reactions. This should be brief. Do they even qualify for testing? Threx's mandibles clicked in quiet agreement. Yes, he said under his breath. Let us see how long they last. The Arbiter raised a hand, or something resembling one, and the chamber fell silent again. A standard environmental trial will be conducted. The hologram shifted. A world appeared. At first glance, it looked barren, rocky terrain, jagged cliffs, and a dense, oppressive atmosphere that seemed to weigh down the very light around it. Trial environment selected. The Arbiter paused. High-gravity planetary surface. There was a moment of confusion. Then came the question everyone was thinking. What is the gravity level? The answer came calmly. 10 times galactic standard. This time there was no laughter. No whispers. Just silence. Because everyone understood what that meant. Galactic standard gravity had been established as the average across most inhabited worlds. It was the baseline for comfort, mobility, and survival. Even slight deviations could have serious effects. Double the standard gravity and many species struggled. Triple it and most would collapse. 10 times was unthinkable. That level is lethal, one delegate said, unable to hide the tension in their voice. It exceeds safe biological limits. The Arbiter did not respond immediately. Instead, it turned its attention toward the human delegation. Clarification: this environment is naturally occurring. Pause. It is classified as Earth-like. The chamber erupted. That is impossible. No species could evolve under such conditions. The skeletal stress alone would be catastrophic. Threx felt a strange sensation, something unfamiliar. Doubt. Slowly he turned his gaze back to the humans. Ambassador Reyes met his eyes. And then, he nodded. Not in arrogance. Not in challenge. But in confirmation. That's our home, Reyes said simply. The words hit harder than any declaration of war. Threx's mind raced. That was true. If humans had evolved under gravity 10 times greater than the galactic norm, then everything about them was wrong. Or rather, everything everyone assumed about them was wrong. Explain, Threx demanded, his voice sharper now. Dr. Aisha Khan stepped forward, activating a personal display. Earth appeared in the hologram, blue oceans, green continents, swirling clouds. Your standard gravity, she said, is about 1/10 of ours. A murmur spread again, but this time it was different. Not mocking. Not dismissive. Uncertain. That means, she continued, our muscles, bones, and cardiovascular systems developed under constant strain, conditions your species would consider extreme. Captain Volkov added, a faint smile on her face. To us, this isn't extreme. She gestured toward the projected world. It's comfortable. The word hung in the air. Comfortable. Threx felt something tighten in his chest. He had spent his entire life training under harsh conditions, pushing his body to its limits. He had believed his species represented the pinnacle of physical evolution. And yet, these beings, these fragile humans, had been living under something far worse since birth. The Arbiter spoke again. The trial will proceed. One by one species were called forward. The first volunteers were the Draxel, renowned across the coalition for their immense strength and resilience. Massive, heavily muscled, built like living tanks. If anyone could withstand such gravity, it would be them. They entered the chamber with confidence. The field activated. And instantly, they collapsed. Gasps echoed through the hall. The Draxel tried to move, their powerful limbs trembling under the crushing force. One attempted to stand. A sharp crack echoed. The trial was aborted immediately. Medical units rushed in. The message was clear. Strength, as they understood it, was not enough. More species tried. And failed. Again. And again. And again. Each attempt ended the same way. Bodies unable to function, systems overwhelmed, survival measured in seconds. The chamber grew quieter with every failure. Until finally, only one species remained. Humanity. The Arbiter turned toward them. Human representatives. You may begin. For a brief moment, no one spoke. All eyes were on the three figures who had once been dismissed as the weakest in the room. Now, they were something else. Something unknown. Ambassador Reyes adjusted his sleeve. Dr. Khan took a slow breath. Captain Volkov rolled her shoulders as if preparing for a simple exercise. And then, they stepped forward. Calmly. Confidently. Without hesitation. As the chamber doors closed behind them, Threx realized something that sent a chill through his armored frame. These beings had never been weak. They had just been misunderstood. And for the first time since the evaluation began, no one in the chamber was laughing anymore. When strength fails, the chamber did not erupt into noise after the humans entered the trial field. It stayed silent. Not the dismissive silence from before, but a heavy, uncertain stillness. The kind that comes when something fundamental has just been challenged, and no one is ready to admit it yet. Commander Threx stood motionless, his eyes locked on the chamber below. The humans were still standing. No strain. No visible effort. Just standing. As if the crushing gravity that had broken warriors and shattered bones meant nothing at all. This is not possible, one delegate whispered. But no one agreed. Because they were watching it happen. Inside the chamber, Captain Elena Volkov took another step forward. Her boots pressed firmly into the ground, controlled, balanced. Not the slow, desperate movement others had shown, but something practiced. Natural. Dr. Aisha Khan crouched slightly, placing her hand against the rocky surface. She studied it like a scientist examining a specimen, not a survivor fighting for stability. Surface density is slightly higher than Earth's average, she said calmly. But nothing extreme. Feels like training conditions, Volkov replied. Ambassador Daniel Reyes looked up toward the observation deck, meeting the gaze of dozens of alien species at once. Are we being evaluated, he asked, or is this a demonstration? The arbiter responded immediately. Both. Reyes nodded once. Understood. The second phase. The arbiter's form shifted, glowing brighter. Phase 2 will now begin. The holographic interface changed. The terrain inside the chamber reconfigured, jagged cliffs rose, the ground split into uneven plates and violent atmospheric currents swept across the surface. Objective, mobility and adaptability. A low murmur spread through the chamber. Most species had failed to even stand. Now the test required movement. Begin. Captain Volkov didn't hesitate. She moved first. Not slowly. Not cautiously. She ran. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the chamber, steady, controlled impacts against the dense ground. Each step carried power, precision. She leapt across a fractured gap in the terrain. Landed smoothly. Kept going. Gasps filled the observation hall. She's accelerating? That shouldn't be possible under that pressure. Dr. Khan followed, though at a slower pace. She navigated the terrain with careful calculation, adjusting her steps, analyzing each shift in ground stability. Wind resistance is higher, she noted. But manageable. Ambassador Reyes walked behind them, not rushing, not struggling. Observing. Always observing. The breaking point of others. Replay previous attempts, the arbiter commanded. Holograms appeared across the chamber, recordings of other species attempting similar movement trials. The contrast was brutal. Massive warriors unable to lift their own bodies. Highly evolved species collapsing after a single step. Creatures built for strength, speed, or endurance. All reduced to helplessness under the same conditions the humans now treated as routine. Threx watched in silence. His claws curled slowly. Not in anger, but in realization. We trained our entire lives, he muttered, to become stronger. His gaze returned to the humans. They were born into it. A dangerous question. Scholar Viral floated closer to him. Do you understand now? She asked softly. Threx didn't answer immediately, because the answer was unsettling. Yes, he said finally. Pause. And no. Viral tilted her luminous form slightly. Explain. Threx's voice dropped lower. If this is their normal. He watched as Captain Volkov climbed a near-vertical incline, gripping the surface and pulling herself upward with controlled strength. Then what happens when they leave it? Viral said nothing. But she didn't need to. They were about to find out. The gravity shift. Phase 3, the arbiter announced. The environment flickered. Then, the gravity dropped. Not gradually. Instantly. From 10 times standard to standard. The humans felt it immediately. Captain Volkov stopped mid-step. Dr. Khan straightened. Ambassador Reyes exhaled slowly. For a brief moment. They didn't move. And that hesitation sent a ripple of confusion through the chamber. Are they disoriented? Did the change affect them negatively? Threx narrowed his eyes. No. He leaned forward slightly. They're adjusting. Unleashed. Captain Volkov moved again. But this time, it was different. She pushed off the ground and launched forward. Farther than before. Faster than before. Her body moved with explosive power, covering distance in seconds that had taken effort before. She's. The delegate didn't finish the sentence. Because they didn't have the words. Dr. Khan stumbled slightly, not from weakness but from overcorrection. She steadied herself quickly, then began moving again, lighter, faster. Incredible, she murmured. It's like everything is reduced. Ambassador Reyes flexed his hand slowly. Welcome to your normal, he said quietly. The realization. The chamber erupted, not in laughter but in alarm. This is a different species. Their strength has increased exponentially. No, Threx said sharply. All eyes turned to him. He pointed toward the humans. They haven't changed. His voice was cold now. We have. A heavy silence followed. Because everyone understood. The humans weren't becoming stronger. They were simply no longer being held back. A demonstration of power. Permission to continue? Captain Volkov asked. The Arbiter paused. Granted. That was all she needed. Volkov crouched slightly. Then, she jumped. This time it wasn't a simple leap. It was a launch. Her body shot upward, clearing a height that would have been impossible moments before. She twisted midair, landed, and immediately transitioned into a sprint. Controlled. Efficient. Powerful. The chamber watched in stunned silence. This is beyond standard capability, one observer said. It's beyond enhanced capability, another added. Dr. Khan activated her wrist display again, recording data. Muscle output increased significantly under reduced gravity, she said. Energy expenditure lower. Efficiency higher. Reyes nodded. This is why we train in heavier conditions. Threx's gaze sharpened. You train in worse environments than your own world? Reyes looked up at him. Yes. Pause. Because we know there are places out here, easier than home. Fear takes shape. That was the moment it changed. Not curiosity. Not uncertainty. Fear. Because the truth was no longer abstract. It was visible. Measurable. Real. If humans were this capable under normal galactic conditions, then what would they be like? In a battlefield? The final test. Phase 4, the Arbiter announced. The environment shifted again. Targets appeared across the terrain, moving, unpredictable, designed to test reaction time and coordination. Objective, combat simulation. Captain Volkov smiled. Finally. Dr. Khan sighed lightly. Try not to scare them too much. No promises. The signal activated. Targets moved. Volkov reacted instantly. She closed distance in seconds, striking with precise, controlled force. Each movement was efficient. No wasted energy, no hesitation. Dr. Khan supported from a distance, analyzing patterns, predicting movement, calling out adjustments. Left, 2 incoming. Volkov shifted mid-motion, adapting instantly. Reyes moved last, but when he did, it was deliberate. Strategic. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the strongest. But he saw everything. And that was something entirely different. Ending hook, retention. As the simulation ended, the chamber remained silent. Not because they didn't understand what they had seen, but because they understood it too well. Ambassador Reyes looked up one final time. You thought we were weak, he said. A small pause. We just live where strength is required. Captain Volkov added, her voice calm but firm. And this? She gestured around the now normal gravity environment. This is easy. A battlefield too easy. The silence in the Grand Assembly chamber no longer carried doubt. It carried understanding. And something far more dangerous. Fear. The simulation had ended, but its impact lingered like a shockwave that refused to fade. Delegates who once mocked humanity now avoided direct eye contact. Others stared openly, studying, calculating, reassessing everything they thought they knew about strength. Commander Threx did not look away. He couldn't. Because what he had just witnessed did not fit into any known category of power. It broke the rules. And in a galaxy built on rules that made humans unpredictable. The challenge? A new voice cut through the chamber. I request a direct comparison trial. All eyes turned. The speaker stepped forward, a towering figure clad in dark, segmented armor. General Crox of the Draxel war clans. Despite their earlier failure under high gravity, the Draxel were still one of the most feared combat species in the coalition. And Crox looked insulted. You have demonstrated environmental adaptation, he continued, his voice heavy and controlled. But strength is not measured by survival alone. His gaze locked onto the humans. It is measured in combat. A ripple of tension spread instantly. This was no longer evaluation. This was a challenge. The Arbiter remained silent for a moment. Then, request acknowledged. Pause. Conditions. Crox answered without hesitation. Neutral battlefield. Standard gravity. A murmur followed. Standard gravity. The same environment where humans had just shown overwhelming advantage. But Crox didn't stop there. To ensure fairness, he added, each side will be limited to equal numbers. Captain Volkov crossed her arms, a faint smirk forming. Fairness? She whispered under her breath. Ambassador Reyes, however, remained calm. How many? He asked. Crox's eyes narrowed slightly. 3. The same number as the human delegation. The chamber tensed. This wasn't just a test. This was a statement. Human response. Dr. Khan glanced at Reyes. This is escalating quickly. Reyes nodded slightly. It was always going to. Volkov stepped forward, rolling her neck once. I'll take that fight. Reyes looked at her. You won't take it alone. A brief pause. Then he turned to the arbiter. We accept. The decision landed heavily. Not cautious. Not hesitant. Immediate. Confident. And that unsettled the chamber even more. The arena. The environment shifted once again. This time, the chamber transformed into a vast battlefield simulation. Open terrain, scattered cover, elevated ridges, and wide sightlines. No tricks. No environmental pressure. Just combat. Trial parameters set, the arbiter announced. Objective: incapacitation without fatal force. Both sides were transported into position. On one end, General Crox and 2 elite Draxel warriors, massive, armored, built for overwhelming force. On the other, 3 humans. No armor. No visible weapons beyond standard Coalition-issued training gear. And yet, they stood differently now. Not like delegates, like soldiers. The weight of expectation. Begin. The signal echoed. But neither side moved immediately. They watched each other. Measured. Calculated. Crox took the first step forward. The ground trembled slightly under his weight. We will not underestimate you again, he said. Captain Volkov tilted her head slightly. Good, she replied. Don't. And then, everything happened at once. Speed versus power. The Draxel charged. Brute force. Direct. Overwhelming. Their strategy was simple. Close distance, overpower, crush. It had worked for centuries. Against everyone. Until now. Volkov moved first. But she didn't charge forward. She moved sideways. Faster than anything the Draxel expected. One of the warriors swung. Too slow. Volkov ducked under the strike, pivoted, and struck the back of the creature's leg. Not with full force, but with precision. The joint buckled slightly. Not broken, but compromised. What? The warrior stumbled. That was all it took. Intelligence in motion. Right flank collapsing, Dr. Khan's voice came instantly. She hadn't moved far, but her eyes were everywhere. Tracking. Predicting. Second incoming, 3 seconds. Volkov didn't look. She trusted it. She moved before the attack even came. The second Draxel lunged. And hit nothing but air. Reyes stepped in then. Not fast. Not aggressive. But perfectly timed. He redirected the Draxel's momentum, just enough to throw it off balance. A small movement. A massive result. The creature crashed into the ground. Strength redefined. Crox roared and charged directly at Volkov. This time there was no hesitation. No testing. Just raw force. Volkov didn't dodge immediately. She waited. Watched. Calculated. At the last possible moment, she moved. Not away. Forward. She stepped inside Crox's reach. His strike missed. Her shoulder drove into his center mass, not to overpower but to disrupt. His balance shifted. Just slightly. But that was enough. Reyes appeared at his side. Khan's voice came again. Now. Together they moved. Not as individuals. As a unit. Crox staggered. For the first time in decades. A Draxel general lost his footing. The moment of truth. The battlefield froze. Not literally. But in perception. Because everyone watching realized something at the same time. The Draxel were stronger. Heavier. More powerful. And they were losing. Not because they lacked strength. But because they relied on it. Humans did not. Adaptation wins. Within moments the outcome became clear. The first Draxel was already down, unable to recover from repeated, targeted strikes. The second struggled to stand, disoriented and overwhelmed. And Crox was surrounded. Not physically, but tactically. Every move he made was anticipated. Every attack countered before it fully formed. He stopped, breathing heavily. Not from exhaustion. From realization. You're not stronger than us, he said. Reyes shook his head slightly. No. Pause. We just learned differently. End of the trial. The arbiter's voice echoed. Trial complete. The battlefield dissolved. The chamber returned. And no one spoke. Because there was nothing left to argue. No assumption left unchallenged. No illusion left intact. Fear becomes respect. Crox stood silently for a moment. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. Not in defeat. In acknowledgement. We were wrong, he said. It wasn't easy. It wasn't proud. But it was honest. Threx watched from above, his expression unreadable. Then he turned slightly towards Scholar Viral. "They are not the strongest," he said. Viral shimmered softly. "No." Threx's eyes narrowed. "They are worse." Ending hook retention. As the chamber began to settle, Ambassador Reyes spoke one final time. "You tested us in your conditions," he said calmly. Pause. "But you still haven't seen." His eyes scanned the assembly. "What happens when the battlefield favors us completely?" Captain Volkov smiled slightly. "Earth isn't the only place like home, where humans become monsters." The chamber had changed. Not physically but in atmosphere. What was once a place of judgment had become something else entirely. A room full of powerful beings, now trying to understand a species they had completely misjudged. The arrogance was gone. The laughter had disappeared. In its place remained tension. And a growing, undeniable question. How dangerous are humans, really? Commander Threx stood still, his massive frame rigid as stone. His mind replayed the battle again and again, the precision, the coordination, the terrifying efficiency. "They adapted mid-combat," he said quietly. Scholar Viral hovered beside him. "Not adapted," she replied. "They trained for it." That answer settled heavily. Because training implied intent. And intent implied preparation. The human proposal. Ambassador Daniel Reyes stepped forward once more, his calm presence now carrying far more weight than before. "You've tested us in your environments," he said. His voice was steady, controlled. "But there's still a gap in understanding." The chamber listened. Carefully. Reyes continued. "You've seen what happens when we operate under your conditions." A brief pause. "Now it's only fair you see what happens under ours." A ripple spread instantly. Even before the Arbiter spoke, the meaning was clear. An Earth-like environment. High gravity. Extreme conditions. The kind that had already crushed every species that attempted to stand in it. General Crox narrowed his eyes. "You're proposing a joint trial?" he asked. "Yes," Reyes replied. "Multiple species. Cooperative engagement. Real-time adaptation." Dr. Khan added, "Educational value. Observational learning. Coalition benefit." Captain Volkov smirked slightly. "And a reality check. The Arbiter decides." The Arbiter's form pulsed with light. "Proposal accepted." The chamber stiffened. "Trial parameters. Multi-species cooperative simulation." Pause. "Environment, Earth-class high gravity." Another pause. "Participants, volunteers." For a moment no one moved. Because volunteering meant stepping into a world where their bodies would barely function. Where survival alone was uncertain. Then, Croc stepped forward. "I will participate." The chamber shifted. Not because it was expected, but because it wasn't. A Draxel general who had just been defeated, choosing to enter an even harsher trial. Threx watched closely. "Pride?" he muttered. Viral shook her glowing form. "No," she said softly. "Respect." One by one, others stepped forward. Warriors, scientists, elite representatives from species across the coalition. Not driven by ego anymore. Driven by something stronger. The need to understand. Entering the human world. The simulation activated. The new environment formed. Rocky terrain. Dense atmosphere. Oppressive weight pressing down from every direction. The moment the participants materialized, they felt it. Gravity. Not just heavier. Crushing. Immediate. Several collapsed instantly. Others dropped to one knee, struggling to breathe. Croc staggered but remained standing, barely. "This is your normal?" he growled. Captain Volkov, already moving, glanced back. "Pretty much." She stretched her arms slightly as if warming up. "To us this is just Tuesday. The true difference." "Stay low," Dr. Khan instructed, her voice calm and clear. "Minimize vertical strain. Control your breathing." Some tried to follow. Most failed. Because their bodies simply weren't built for it. Every movement cost energy. Every second drained them. Meanwhile, the humans moved freely. Not effortlessly, but efficiently. They weren't immune to the gravity. They were adapted to it. That difference changed everything. The scenario. The Arbiter's voice echoed through the simulation. Objective: survive and secure extraction point. Hostile units appeared across the terrain. Automated drones, fast-moving, coordinated. Even under normal conditions they would be a challenge. Under this gravity, they were deadly. Formation. Reyes called out. But most species couldn't even stand properly. Coordination was nearly impossible. Stick close. Volkov added, already intercepting the first wave. She moved like a force of nature. Each step controlled, each strike precise. Not wasted motion. Not brute force. Pure efficiency. Collapse of the coalition. The first alien unit went down, not from enemy attack but from its own body failing under pressure. Another tried to move too quickly, its limbs gave out. Panic began to spread. We can't fight like this. Our bodies won't respond. This is impossible. Crocs roared, forcing himself forward, but even he was slowing. For the first time, the coalition was experiencing something unfamiliar. Helplessness. Humans take control. Everyone listen. Dr. Khan's voice cut through the chaos. Stop fighting the gravity. They hesitated. Work with it, she continued. Short movements. Low center of mass. Conserve energy. Reyes added, follow our lead. Don't try to match us, adapt to the environment. Was strange. Taking instruction from the species they had mocked. But they had no choice. And slowly, things began to change. Learning under pressure. The aliens adjusted. Not perfectly. Not quickly. But enough. They stopped trying to overpower the environment. Started surviving within it. And that made all the difference. Volkov moved ahead, clearing paths. Reyes coordinated positioning. Khan analyzed patterns and guided movement. Together. They weren't just surviving. They were leading. The turning point. As the group pushed forward, something unexpected happened. Crocs, still struggling, managed to stay upright. He followed Volkov's movements, mirroring her steps, adjusting his balance. Slower. Heavier. But improving. I see it, he muttered. Efficiency over force. Volkov glanced back briefly. Now you're getting it. The extraction zone. The final objective came into view, a raised platform across uneven terrain. Under normal conditions it would be simple. Here. It was brutal. Several species hesitated. They didn't think they could make it. Reyes didn't slow down. Keep moving, he said. Your body will adapt faster than you think. It wasn't entirely true. But it was enough. Final push. The drones closed in. Pressure increased. Energy drained. But something had changed. The coalition wasn't fighting alone anymore. They were following a species that had mastered this world. And that made survival possible. One by one they reached the extraction point. Some crawling. Some barely standing. But alive. End of the simulation. The environment faded. The chamber returned. And for a long moment, no one spoke. Because what they had just experienced was more than a trial. Was a lesson. Respect earned. Croc stepped forward again. This time slower. He looked at Reyes. At Volkov. At Khan. You don't just survive in this, he said. You dominate it. Reyes shook his head slightly. No. Pause. We respect it. Threx's realization. High above, Threx exhaled slowly. They weren't built to be the strongest, he said. Viral shimmered. No. Threx's gaze hardened. They were built to endure. Pause. And to adapt. Ending hook, retention. As the chamber began to settle, Captain Volkov spoke one last time. You've now seen us at home. She looked around the room. But the real question is. A small, confident smile appeared. What happens when we bring that mindset everywhere else? The strongest where it matters. The chamber of Carthus Prime had never felt like this before. Not during war declarations. Not during the rise or fall of empires. Not even during first contact with species far older and more advanced than most. Because this was different. This was not about power alone. This was about understanding that everything they believed about power was incomplete. The simulation had ended. But its impact had not. Delegates stood in silence, each processing the same realization in their own way. Humans were never the weakest species. They had simply been measured the wrong way. The aftermath. General Crocs remained at the center of the chamber, his massive frame still, his breathing steady but heavy. He was not injured. Not defeated in the traditional sense. But changed. I have fought in 100 campaigns, he said slowly. His voice carried across the chamber. I have faced species stronger, faster, and more advanced than my own. Pause. But I have never faced a species that understands survival like this. His gaze shifted toward the humans. Not with hostility. Not with pride. But with something far more meaningful. Respect. The human perspective. Ambassador Daniel Reyes stepped forward, calm as ever. We're not special, he said. That statement immediately drew attention. Several delegates reacted, confused. Not special? After everything they had seen? Dr. Aisha Khan smiled slightly as if she had expected the reaction. What we are, she clarified, is a product of our environment. Captain Elena Volkov crossed her arms. And our history. Reyes nodded. We evolved on a world that never gave us the option to be weak. A quiet ripple passed through the chamber. Not disagreement. Recognition. Redefining strength. Commander Threx finally stepped forward. The massive Varnak warrior who had once dismissed humanity without a second thought now stood face to face with them. You are not the strongest, he said. It wasn't an insult. It was a statement. Reyes nodded. We know. Threx continued. You are not the fastest. Correct. You are not the most advanced. Also correct. The chamber listened carefully. Because now, every word mattered. Threx's voice lowered. Then what are you? A brief silence followed. Not hesitation. Consideration. Then Reyes answered. We are the species that keeps going, when others stop. The truth that changed everything. Dr. Khan stepped forward, activating a display. Data appeared, graphs, biological comparisons, environmental models. Most species in the coalition evolved in stable conditions, she explained. Predictable gravity. Controlled climates. Manageable ecosystems. The display shifted. Earth appeared again. Unstable weather. Violent tectonic activity. Predators. Diseases. Extreme environments. Humanity didn't have that luxury, she continued. We evolved in constant challenge. Captain Volkov added quietly. And we didn't just survive it. A small pause. We adapted to it. The Arbiter's judgment. The chamber darkened slightly as the Arbiter moved forward once more. This was it. The final decision. The evaluation is complete. Every being in the chamber focused entirely. Humanity has demonstrated exceptional capability in the following areas. The holographic display expanded. Environmental adaptation. Cooperative strategy. Physical endurance under extreme conditions. Pause. Then. Reclassification confirmed. The light intensified. Species designation, adaptive apex survivors. The words echoed. Not just through the chamber. Through every mind present. What it really meant. It wasn't just the title. It was a shift in how the galaxy would see humanity. Not as the strongest. Not as conquerors. But as something far more dangerous. A species that could survive where others couldn't. Adapt where others failed. Endure where others broke. And once they learned, they didn't forget. A new kind of fear. One delegate spoke up, hesitant. If they can do this in their own environment. Another finished the thought. What happens when they adapt to ours? Silence followed. Because now, that question had no comforting answer. Threx turned toward the humans again. You said this was your home, he said. Reyes nodded. Yes. Threx's gaze sharpened. And yet you train beyond it. Volkov smiled slightly. Always. The final realization. Scholar Viral drifted forward, her luminous form glowing softly. This is why they seemed weak, she said. The chamber listened. Because we were measuring them by what they are not. Pause. Instead of understanding what they are. She turned toward the assembly. They are not built for perfection. Her light pulsed gently. They are built for persistence. Humanity's warning. Ambassador Reyes looked around the chamber one last time. At the warriors. The leaders. The observers. We didn't come here to prove we're better than anyone, he said. His tone was calm. But firm. We came here to join. A brief pause. To learn. Another pause. And to cooperate. The tension eased, slightly. But then. He added one more sentence. But understand this. The chamber stilled again. If we ever have to fight. His eyes hardened just enough. We won't stop adapting. The shift in the galaxy. That was the moment everything changed. Not with an explosion. Not with a declaration. But with a realization. Humanity wasn't a threat because of what they were. They were a threat because of what they could become. Closing scene. As the assembly slowly began to disperse, conversations returned, but they were different now. Quieter. More thoughtful. More cautious. Commander Threx stood still for a long moment, then finally turned to leave. But before he did, he spoke one last time, quietly, almost to himself. We thought they were weak. Pause. Then. They were just holding back.